Jordyn Tyson has been inconsistently available, but he is one of the most gifted players in the class. He has unbelievable tools. I think that he could very well become a consistent 1,000-yard guy, a number one receiver on a team. I wonder, knowing how some of these other players that have had his injury history, if he'll still even go in the first round. When we're in Indianapolis, we'll probably get more context on how they feel about his recovery, how teams may feel about his longevity in the NFL. But can you provide, one, some context here on his injury history, and then two, do you think it's going to catch up to him?
So the injury history for Arizona State wide receiver Jordyn Tyson, he began his career at Colorado, and in 2022, Joe, he tore not his ACL, he tore his ACL, his MCL, and his PCL. So he tore 3 different ligaments in his knee in one injury in 2022. That is obviously disconcerting for a guy that is such an explosive mover, a guy that is a 3-level separator. But then in 2024, and I feel like people probably remember this a little bit more, when Arizona State was making their playoff push, he broke his collarbone and missed the last few games of that season. And then this past year, he missed a couple of games because of the nagging hamstring issue, right? So it's troubling to me, and it would always be more troubling if it's just like, man, this guy's had like 3 different knee issues in the same knee. Like, that's where the degenerative conversation starts. But it is also still unsettling to see a guy that's had 3 different injury-plagued seasons for 3 different variations of injuries. Like, he's had a lower body ligament tear, 3 of them in one knee. He's also had the nagging hamstring issues, which for people that have ever seen the hamstring things, usually that stuff doesn't go away, Joe. Like, hamstring issues usually come back a little bit, man. Like, it is a very nagging injury. But then the collarbone, I'm not as worried about the collarbone because, like, that's a one-off broken bone. Like, it'll be fine. But, like, the issues with lower body stuff does generally worry me a lot. And I think that just in a vacuum, Jordyn Tyson in the NFL, in terms of just the on-field perspective, he's a wide receiver 1 by a lot of NFL teams right now for people that I've talked to. Now, the conversation around the injuries is interesting because we'll get a little bit more context in Indianapolis when they put him through the medicals and everything. But I was told by a scouting source in the league right now, an area scout, that they believe that particular NFL team believes that it's not as bad as some people think it's going to be, the medicals, but it's still not good, right? So, like, there is some middle ground to, like, the worst possible outcome to the best possible outcome. Jordyn Tyson's probably somewhere in the middle. So I tend to think that he's going to be a first-round pick, but if there's a wide receiver between Carnell Tate, Mekhi Lemon, and Jordyn Tyson that do slide, I think the 2 most likely guys are Tyson due to the injuries and Mekhi Lemon due to that kind of lack of height, weight, speed, exciting combination of athleticism. But I do think Tyson has a chance to slide somewhere to the mid to late first-round conversation in the end, because I do think that the medicals are a big worry. If they weren't a worry, I think we'd be talking about a top 10 NFL draft pick. And it's also possible that he ends up being that if the medicals aren't as bad as we think. But based upon those conversations, I do think that there is going to be some worry on the NFL level for the longevity of Jordyn Tyson.
Yeah, I think that Tyson's film is undoubtedly that of a receiver that would be worthy of going in the top 10. I have compared him to Justin Jefferson. I think that he has that overall smoothness to his game. There is, I believe, a translation to his play style to being a number 1 receiver in an offense. And I think that it's more visible than with Carnell Tate, because Carnell Tate has always been a secondary target. Jordyn Tyson, when he's healthy and he's good to go, he has always been a bucket whenever you've called upon him.
Right.
But the problem is we have not had in back-to-back years full availability from him. As you just laid out the whole framework of the problems that he's been dealing with, we're talking about ligament stuff. We're talking about muscles that tend to catch up to you and tend to be recurring problems. I think that just specifically in the scope of this year's class, there are a lot of really good receivers. There's nothing worse than drafting a very talented receiver, getting bits and pieces out of that potential, and then him not being available to you for a full season. He can barely get through a 12-game college season. How can we expect him to play 17 games and then in the playoffs when he has not been able to do that in college. And I think a lot of NFL teams are going to look at that, and then they're going to compare him to, all right, should we just go with Mekhi Lemon? Should we just go with Casey Concepcion? Should we just go with Elijah Surratt? Should we just go with Omar Cooper? There is a long list of players who maybe don't have that same ceiling, but at the very least would provide reliability. The other last part with this, I look at a lot of the teams that are in that, let's say, 7 to 20 bucket. There's not a lot that desperately really need a premier number one receiver. A lot of those teams are going to be picking at the beginning of the second round. Those are the teams that are picking at the beginning of the first round, like the Raiders, the Browns, the Jets, that just don't have anything. But
Titans.
But at the end of the day, Ryan, feels like there could be a strong case to be made that Tyson ends up being a huge steal for a team at the end of the first round that needs a receiver and can maybe be a little bit patient with him, or an up-and-coming team that doesn't need him to be good right away but needs him to be really good in his second year in the NFL. It doesn't. It's not an indictment that Tyson won't work out. It's just another one of these examples where the NFL pre-draft process might chew him up and spit him out.
I think the word that you said there that I completely agree on is value. Like, because here's the thing. I think Jordyn Tyson's a dog. Like, I think he's a really good player, man. 3-level separator, great downfield acceleration. I think that he has some really good work as a route runner and understanding how to manipulate a stem and attack blind spots. Like, he's a really good football player. As long as he's healthy, he's going to be really good on the NFL level. You know what it reminds me of, Joe, to a degree? I was just looking it up as we were kind of having the initial conversation, because this was eerily similar to me. Do you remember when Landon Dickerson came out of Alabama in the 2021 NFL draft? Now, Dickerson's was a little bit more extreme. He was at Florida State, went to Alabama. He had never finished a college football season. Injuries just everywhere, right? And he was going to be a top 20 draft pick if he was just full bill of health. Well, he falls to the 37th overall selection of that draft. And in 5 years, he has been a 3-time Pro Bowler for the Philadelphia Eagles, Landon Dickerson. Now, a completely different position. But the point is that we have seen medicals drop guys a little bit in the draft. I don't necessarily think that Tyson's going to go into the second rounds, but if you told me he fell to the middle to end of the first round, I would not be shocked just based upon what the medicals might bring. But the point of the conversation is he's going to be good in the NFL when he's available. But the thing about Dickerson, right, is that Dickerson's been good with the Eagles, but you know what we're hearing right now around the Philadelphia area right now, Joe? Apparently there's some conversations after 5 seasons that Landon Dickerson might be thinking about retiring because his body's beat up. That's the worry that we're trying to illustrate here is 1, draft slot, but 2, long-term projection. Even if Landon Dickerson retires this offseason, he was well worth an early second-round pick because he ended up, being a part of multiple Super Bowl teams, and he was a 3-time Pro Bowler in 5 years. So that's great. But the point is that comforts with the immediate versus the long-term future for a football player, especially a guy that you're drafting in the first round. Everyone, I think, loves Jordyn Tyson for the most part as an NFL draft prospect, but these are the conversations that are being had behind the scenes for these NFL teams in terms of short-term versus long-term, and how much can we trust that long-term window of success. And I think that Landon Dickerson's kind of an interesting parallel that we can make, although different situation, different position of that kind of that short-term versus long-term payback that we're talking about here.